Hi, everybody. Welcome back to Pagan's Witchy Corner. My name is Pagan, and I am so happy to be back with you this week. And I'm really excited because I have a guest who I have loved their work from the first moment I saw them at the Witches Sabbath conference. I want to say it was 2021. I honestly don't remember because it was the pandemic and all the years have blurred together, but I'm pretty sure it was 2021. And that is Najah Lightfoot. Najah, welcome to the show. I'm so happy you're here.
Oh, thank you, Pagan. Thank you so much for inviting me and having me on your show. I'm super excited to talk to you. And I also want to tell you just straight away, thank you so much for the lovely review you gave of my book, Powerful Juju, on your site yesterday. That was really, really sweet. And I was very touched by it. So, yeah, it's you and I've been trying to get together for a while. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm really happy to talk to you. And thank you to all your listeners too for listening to our conversation today.
Well, I have to say, from the first time I heard your talk at the Witches Sabbath with Devin Hunter and Matt Oren and Storm Wolf and all of the other amazing individuals that put on that wonderful virtual conference for everybody, and you talked about working with Tituba of all people.
Yes.
And I was like,
Mhm.
I've never thought of her as, a spiritual being that we could reach out to for, working with. And I was just enamored. And of course, I was like, this is so cool. I have to go buy her book. And I bought your first book, which was Good Juju. Also, fantastic book, everybody. Just buy all the books. You know the drill. The links are going to be in the description. Just buy all the books. I promise you, you're not going to regret it. I digress. But Good Juju was so amazingly good. And I remember when I was reading it, because I also bought it on Audible, because sometimes with my ADHD brain, it's a lot easier for me to listen while I read than, I don't have to read the page 25 times to comprehend what I'm trying to read. And the person that was reading the book on Audible and then actually sitting there going page by page through your book was so comfortable. It was like literally sitting down with an old friend and just talking about all the practices and all the things. And I was like, this is an incredible experience. And I was just in love with your work from day one at that point. And then when I
Oh,
saw your next book come out, I was like, oh my God, Marcus, can I have a copy, please? I want that copy. I want to talk to Najah or Najah. So I'm
oh,
like, yes, I absolutely am in love with your books. And Powerful Juju
oh,
was so good. So
oh,
good. Oh,
thank you.
I read it in a day. That's how good it
Oh,
was. Yeah.
oh my gosh. Thank you so much. I am so touched that you have found it meaningful. That's my mission, just to be able to write things that are meaningful to magical, spiritual people. So I can't thank you enough for that compliment. That makes me feel really good.
And the cool thing about your newest book, Powerful Juju, is that you set it to a soundtrack.
Yeah,
And
a
I'm just
playlist.
like
I
it
did.
I was like, okay, so all these are going to be about a playlist. I like music, and my music is spiritual to me. And then I'm sitting there reading it, and about I think I was 2 or 3 chapters in, and I finally went and looked up the playlist on YouTube, and I was sitting there with it on loop while I was reading because it made the book so much better to actually listen to what you were inspired by at the same time. So
Oh,
that
that's
was
so
so
cool
cool.
you did that. That's great. Thank you. I'm so happy about that you actually listened to the playlist and read the words at the same time. That was my intention. Oh, that's so cool.
It was so, so cool. And the one thing I was also super excited about with the book, and I'm going to let you talk more about this as well, too, but the fact that some of the beings that you have mentioned that are good to work with and ask for assistance from are not traditional gods and goddesses.
Yes.
And they were human once. They were people who lived on this earth and had such intense struggles on this
Yes.
earth. The one that brought me to tears was Frida's story. And
Oh.
her story, like, because I have MS, and so I understand being in
Oh.
chronic pain and all this, and her fight of being in pain. And just the
Yes.
way that you wrote her story in there and talked about it was just so intense that I'm just like, I'm not gonna cry. I'm not gonna cry. I'm crying. It's fine. It's fine. It's cool. But it was such an amazing experience because not very many witchcraft books bring me to tears. Most of the time, I'm like, okay, this is a really interesting thing. I like this take on it, and I like this, and I like that. And I'll take what I need from it and, apply it to my practice or, just appreciate the book as is. But not very many can move me to actual physical emotions.
Oh.
So the fact that it did and her story was so powerful, which is really interesting because growing up in New Mexico, like we were talking before we started recording, I knew all about Diego Rivera's work.
Oh, yes, that's right.
So I knew all about it because so many artists in Taos, especially, were influenced by his work. So
Oh,
you had
yes, we
this,
love Taos,
yeah,
yes.
we had so many different artists that were influenced by it. And I want to say that they're, and I could be wrong about this. So anybody who's listening, if you want to comment and tell me, it's been a minute. I haven't been to New Mexico in like a decade. So I don't quite remember, but I'm pretty sure there is a mural in Taos. I know there's one in the old courthouse that was inspired by his style, but I want to say that there was one that was just across from the plaza that was supposed to be a likeness of him doing artwork. And so I
Mm.
don't know if it actually is him, but I want to say that it is, and I just don't remember. But I do remember growing up and hearing a lot about his work, and especially with all of my art classes growing up, everybody talked about him because everybody knew him. And that was
Yeah.
part of it. So it was really interesting to hear his wife's story, which I had no idea about, which was really interesting.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, that's so awesome. So you learned about Frida's life story through my book.
Yes. Uh, it
Oh.
was so, so interesting. But yeah, let's talk a little bit about why you chose some of these impactful human beings to be, I don't want to say icons of worship, but almost like patron saints, I think would probably be an appropriate term to call them.
Mhm,
Um,
mhm.
talk a little bit about that. Why did you choose them? What was your inspiration for them? Do you have others that weren't mentioned? Those kinds of things.
Well, when I wrote Good Juju, and thank you again for your appreciation of it and that it was meaningful to you, that was like, a beginner's or maybe even seasoned practitioners if you need a little bit of like enthusiasm and trying to like go into the magic in ways that are comfortable and easy, or maybe just kind of pique your interest into doing magical spiritual work in a way that isn't so intense and just is a real like a nice opener for people or a nice refresher to
Mm-hmm.
people if you've been in the craft or been a practitioner of magical rites and rituals for a long time. And while I was writing it, I was also like, I would love to write a piece, a book that helped people go deeper because, life has its, myriad of struggles. Not every day is joyful. And then there was so much going on in the world. And when I wrote Good Juju, a lot of my readers, they were so kind, like they wanted to like touch with me more deeply.
Mm-hmm.
So when I was sitting down to think about the second book that I would write, I was trying to come up with a way that people could really touch with me deeply because I always tell people what I write is authentic. This is my own practice, this is what works for me and what I write, I do. And so I've always been had a great love for music and all of the divine feminine women icons that I chose for my book, they all had powerful meaning for me.
Mm-hmm.
And they were people that I turned to for inspiration when, life was struggling. And I felt that they needed to be recognized and that people might get a lot out of it, and I did say in my book now, some of them probably would never say, oh, use the word goddess to describe themselves. But to me, because of their brilliance and their influence and their impactfulness into humanity, what they gave when they, were on the earth plane, especially if they were human, mythological, goddesses, they have their own track. But I also wanted to touch on, you know, women who had walked the earth plane and had struggled deeply, but had made, sincere contributions
Mhm.
that I found helpful and uplifting. And that's how I ended up with the 12 that I chose.
I think that is an absolutely empowering kind of thing to think about. And I guess you could go into that whole conversation of, what makes a goddess and, how do we decide and all that because, even looking at some of the traditional goddesses, there's lore kind of linking them to at one point in time being human.
Hmm.
So it's very much one of those things of perhaps these women and there might be males out there too, but in speaking in terms of your book, the divine feminine women that you mentioned, those were women that they really could be considered goddesses due to their struggles and reaching out to them. And honestly, I don't know what happens beyond the spiritual plane once we die. Who knows?
Right.
Maybe we get to check a box that says, I don't want to go back and be human. I want to be a goddess. Let me do that
Yeah.
job instead. I will help
Right.
people from beyond. I don't know. I have not been on the other side as of yet from my knowledge, so I don't know what happens. But I do
Right.
know that I think that it's really inspiring to find really what works. And that also kind of writes a new page in modern witchcraft, which I thought was really inspiring with your book as well, because, with the music and everything else that you inspired in your book, which was so cool, that you are writing a new page in modern witchcraft and what that's going to look like for the people of tomorrow.
Oh, thank you.
Because
Oh.
even though, yes, we should appreciate the gods of old, what about some of the gods of new that do deserve a place in the pantheons?
Exactly. How do we, bridge the old and the new? And, especially through the music, I think,
Mm-hmm.
the music is just, you know, how, music is transcendent,
Yes.
and so to like pair that with ritual in a way. And the songs that I chose, I've been, on this path for a long time. They're not what I would call traditional, music when you go to some events or things like that, and I've always kind of be like, can we get some R&B up in here or something? Okay, that sounds really good, but I can't really groove to that song. But okay, I'll get out there and twirl around, I mean, that's cool. I like that, but there's a lot, there's a lot
Yes.
that and I thought it was so fun and it was, pretty interesting to, take all of that those songs and then pair them with magic and rites and ritual and I do like to toot my own horn a little bit here and say I'm very grateful and very happy that, this is all my own original content outside of, the songs, of
Mm-hmm.
course. I didn't write that or anything. And then, the ritual for casting a circle, that's not mine, but that belongs through the Doreen Valiente work. But still, everything else,
I thought it was really neat. And I want to say, I think it was the section on Doreen Valiente. Um, the song you had paired with her was an Adele song, right?
yes,
Yes.
yes.
So it was very interesting when I was writing a review. I was like, okay, I'm going to put the Adele song on because I'm very familiar with it and I'm going to write that to it, which I got about halfway through the review and I was like, this is the wrong Adele song. And so I changed it to Set Fire to the Rain. And like the review was done in like, I don't know, 10 minutes. It was just out of me so fast. And
You're inspired to go find your own tune. That's great. Your own Adele song that worked for you. Oh, that's fantastic.
but the funny thing was, while I was listening to it, which I don't work with Persephone, but I have a friend who does, and I sent the song to her and I said, hey, I know you work with Persephone, but I think this is Persephone's song. And she was like, I never thought about this, but I think you might be right. I think you're on to something. Because there's so much power behind that song. And if you know the lore of Persephone, she has a lot of that dark kind of power, but she's also that kind of, light and happy goddess at the same time. And it's like, what would happen if you were separated from the person that you cared about? And it's like,
Right, and you
you'd
were in the
set fire to the
underworld.
rain. I'm like, yes, yes, queen, yes, I love it. I was so inspired by it, but I thought it was
Oh,
so cool.
that's great. That's really great. Yeah. Yeah, it's great to we have to keep our craft and our traditions. We have to keep moving forward with them, and it's wonderful to take, things that are traditional and that have stood the test of time for reasons, but to also take those and morph them into things that work for us too. And that's what makes it a living craft, a living tradition. Spirituality isn't stagnant. It's a magical, living, breathing practice. And it becomes most powerful when you put yourself into it and find what works for you and how to bridge all those things and go into places in your mind and in your memories or in your future thoughts and keep going with your practice. That's really what I try to do, and that's really what I was trying to do when I wrote Powerful Juju, was like show people that, you can take your problems and you can go into magic in a way that can be helpful for you and the work does stand the test of time
Mhm.
and also move forward and just like you did open your mind to a whole new song. And now all of a sudden you're thinking about Persephone and the underworld and
I
oh,
mean, whatever
okay,
works, right? And it's so
whatever
interesting
works.
how
Yeah.
and music is one of those things that's so transcending, and, um, when I write, I have to have music, I have to, because otherwise my brain
Yes.
just gets way too busy, and so having music some days it has to be, like, classical music, depending on how
Me
busy my brain
too.
is,
Yes, I listen to classical music all the time.
and other days, I'm like, it has to be a specific type of music for whatever it is that I'm writing. And I'm working on a fiction book. I have written fiction books
Oh,
in the past. Thank
congratulations.
you. But the fiction book that I'm currently working on is a fantasy one, and I think the playlist for it has like 1,000 songs on it because it's an entire book series.
Oh, wow, that's fantastic.
So it's one of those things where I'm like every like couple of pages has its own song.
Well, yeah, it's the score to your novel.
Yes, yes, I love that. It's so good.
Yeah.
So I do want to change gears just a
Mhm.
smidge, and that's I want to talk about something that you see it all over social media, especially TikTok, and a lot of people will talk about the fact that the different aspects of whether it's okay or not okay to practice, and please, because I'm not a practitioner of it, so please tell me if I'm pronouncing this correctly. Voodoo?
Voodoo.
Voodoo. Okay. I am not a practitioner of that. That's not something that is my cup of tea, which is just fine. But I would like to talk a little bit about that and kind of what it would take for somebody to practice it and practice it, I guess, culturally appropriately, if that's the appropriate way to say that. Because I think that it gets mixed up a lot with, the internet. And so I think because you do talk about it in your book, and I would like you to go ahead and talk a little bit about that as well here on the show, just so that way there's clarification out there, especially for listeners who may be interested in that practice, but don't know where the line sits.
Right, sure. Well, I will talk about it in terms of my own experience
Mhm.
and how I came into voodoo. So, as a practicing witch, a seeker, I'm always looking and learning for new things. And personally, I'm looking for icons, women of color,
Yes.
which was also very important to me when I wrote my book, who were magical people. And through, going seeking, doing different practices, learning different types of magic, I was drawn to Marie Laveau. So, and the same thing with Tituba because they were women of color and they were magical, powerful women who, had their own practices. And that was very important to me because honestly, a lot of the things living here in the West, we come from Western tradition, we come
Mhm.
from European traditions. So that's, how I started learning, which is great to me, I was fine. And so in terms of I just found myself drawing closer and closer to Marie Laveau, and then I ended up spending a lot of time in New Orleans. I don't live in New Orleans, but taking lots of trips down there.
Hmm.
And that's what I was talking about in the book. Like, if you work with the divine Marie Laveau or Maman Brigitte, like I had in the book, that doesn't make you an initiate of voodoo. And
Hmm.
I kind of liken it to, I like to tell people, like, just look at it the same way as if, we're talking about organized religion and you decided that you wanted to become, a baptized Roman Catholic. You would have to go to school. I mean, or, you'd have, or you want to become, a practicing Buddhist. I mean, you'd have to
Hmm.
study, and take training. I mean, I have deep respect for people who decide that, they actually want to initiate and become, part of this structure. So, what I always say is, yeah, you can. I wrote it, I'm giving people these ways to like touch with um, the Loa deities from voodoo, but that doesn't make you an initiate of it.
Hmm.
Just like, if you were going to get baptized, you have to find a mambo, or a ugan who runs a house or a temple and study and find your way if that's what you want to become. And so it's just, if you want to go down the path of initiation, and that's also in the craft, there are still traditions that you do need to be initiated into if that's what you want to do.
Yes.
But you got to take it one step at a time. And it took me a very long time before I was even that was even something I was even considering. So it's not something that, I just say, "Oh yeah, one day I decide that this is what I want to do,"
You didn't
you
wake
know?
up the next day and be like,
And
this
I
is what
say,
I'm going to do today.
"Yeah,
I
I'm going to
mean,
become initiated." Okay. And people, I'm not on TikTok. I have enough social media platforms to keep up with, but I see that through other places, but initiation is powerful. And these are things that change your life, and it's a dedication. And I feel that people are always seeking and looking for places to expand their spirituality. So if that's what you decide you want to do, then you have to go down those real paths to figure it out. It's just, it's something you really have to be serious about and decide that that's what you want to do. And if that's what you really want to do, then you'll put the effort and the work, and spirit will come and aid you in those paths to take you to those levels to find your way into those practices.
I think that is beautifully said, and it is very true. And I would say that that also applies to a lot of other aspects of witchcraft as well. That if you want to go down a specific path, whether it be the path of voodoo, or if it is the path of Norse paganism, or the path of Celtic paganism, or British traditional Wicca, whatever you choose to go, whatever path you want to go down, it does require a degree of study and commitment and learning and understanding and all those things. So I think, that is also beautifully said about going that route and going the respectful way to do it. And I think that that should be said about all the paths. You should go in a respectful way, whereas some paths are much more open and much easier in accepting, similar to like Norse paganism. That's a really good way to remember. Figure out your path, practice your way, but also do it respectfully.
Exactly. Also do and acknowledge the people who have gone before you and
Yes.
and what they did so that you can have this, way, this conversation or be invited in. It's, the path of the witch. I believe it was Sybil Leek's birthday yesterday, in Diary of the Witch. She said it can be lonely, it can be frustrating, it can be scary. And when you get really serious about it, just like, when I talk about going to the crossroads and go by yourself, okay, well, yeah, you can talk all this stuff, but did you go? Did you get out there at midnight? Did you show up at the fire circle, or what? Or this is just all armchair conversation that we're having here. So, okay, let's talk when you've actually sit out there at night by yourself. Okay.
Yeah, going I mean, even I have done some graveyard work in the past and all that, and it was not even to honor anybody like that. It was to work with Hell specifically, the goddess Hell. And
Oh, okay.
so to work with her, I went into a graveyard and I sat there because I wanted to be amongst the dead and to
Mm-hmm.
understand that aspect of her. And I did that during the daytime, and it was still a little unnerving
Mm-hmm.
because you're in a place that is much closer to the side of humanity that nobody really likes to. We talk about it, but we don't like to talk about it, and that's the aspect of death and dying. And so it
Right.
was one of those things of sitting there even during the daytime. It was a very unnerving, but it wasn't unnerving enough to be like I should get up and leave. It was enough to be like I'm not really comfortable with my own mortality kind of thing. And that
Right.
was one of those moments of sitting there. I don't know if I could have done that at midnight. I may have been a little bit chicken.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. I mean, this work, it does cause you to face things in yourself, so, you'll have to face things in yourself. And that's how you grow. And that's how you know if that's where you really want to go down or you don't really want to go down, and that's part of growth. That's part of spirituality. That's part of growing as a person, as a practitioner, as a witch. You will find out.
You will find out the truth. You will find out the hard stuff, and sometimes you'll find it out the hard way.
Exactly.
Sometimes your
Exactly.
deities will drop this whole bomb in your lap, and you're like, well, I wasn't expecting that when I asked for this. And they're like, but you have to work
Exactly.
through this to get to that.
Yes, and,
Congratulations.
exactly, pagan. I find that true myself more times often than not. But no, I was gonna do this. Well, no, no, you're not. No, you're gonna do it this way, but
I think it's
yeah,
so funny when that happens with some deities and spirits that are like,
right,
hey, you're really wanting to do that road. Are you sure? Are you
right,
sure you want to do
exactly,
this?
exactly.
Okay, you asked for it, but you have to
Okay.
go down that road, the creepy one, to get there.
That's right. That's right. We're not just gonna make it easy for you, you know. you're gonna you're gonna remember, that this is how you got down this road and the turns and pitfalls that you were in and when you got up and the road was good and that felt good, that didn't, but that's a practice.
That
You
is.
know,
Mm-hmm.
that's what a practice is. That's how you learn and grow and gain confidence and you always have to use your discernment, that to see like, does that feel right to me, true to me? And sometimes you don't even know that until you start the practice or the
Yeah.
magic or, wherever you're trying to go. You won't know until you get there. But that doesn't mean it was, not good or bad. It just means that, okay, I've done that. I have discernment now and I'm going to try this. Maybe that didn't work out, but at least you did it, and it's in your
Yes.
tool bag.
It is a learning experience all the way, and it's something that's so interesting when it comes to all the different forms of witchcraft and all the different pieces that we all kind of
Oh, yeah.
eclectically take from all the different practices for our own. And
Exactly. I mean, you're talking about Norse paganism. I'm like,
mhm.
I don't really know anything about Norse
And
paganism.
that's okay.
I don't,
That's okay.
I don't, you know, I don't barely understand. I think you can tell me the Ogham alphabet or runic stuff. I'm like, I have a book on, I look at it, I read it, go, I'm just not connected to it, and that's okay.
That is okay. That's exactly
Not
okay.
my thing.
And that's the thing, though. Even if you come across something, for those who are listening to us as we're talking about this, if you come across something that you're just like, that doesn't jive with me, I cannot tell you how many books I have read where I'm like, it was a good book, but I got nothing out of it.
Yeah,
And there's
that's
nothing wrong with
okay.
that. That
There's
means
nothing
somebody
wrong
else
with
out
that at
there
all.
will, but I didn't personally because it didn't apply to my practice.
Right, that's fine.
Yes, exactly. So, in terms of talking about your books, Good Juju and Powerful Juju, is there any more books that are on the horizon in the Juju series?
Well, I'm still waiting to be inspired. So
That's a perfectly fair answer.
I sit and I go, to write and publish a book, as you know, takes a very long
Oh
time.
gosh, yes.
And oh man, and you got to be committed. So, I have to find, I'm still waiting for that muse to come and say, okay, Najah, we need you to commit, the next 2 to 3 years of your life to this topic and subject. So far, that has not happened. I mean, so we'll see. I keep going around with different projects in my mind, and I'm just like, no.
Well, and that's the thing that I consider, at least from a fiction perspective, because I've never written a nonfiction book. I have a couple of nonfiction
Oh,
ideas, but I've
uh-huh.
never put them pen to paper yet, other than writing down the generalized idea. But in a fiction perspective, I consider all of the fictional ideas one of those things of it has potential, kind of like an egg that's waiting to be hatched.
Yes,
It could hatch and grow into a beautiful thing, or it could never hatch and never see the light of day. And
exactly.
I have a couple of books that I started that will never see the light of day. And some of those are due to the change of the world climate and the way
Yeah.
that the world itself has changed politically, socially, economically, all these things. And I just know that those ideas would never function well in today's society. Not that they were bad or anything like that. They just would not be well received because of the way the world has changed. So, that being said, those will never see the light of day ever. They get shelved in a box someplace
Right.
that never gets seen ever again, and they will
Well,
probably be there forever.
you sound like a true writer. There's lots of manuscripts and boxes. Like, by the time I got to the end of that, we're like, eh. Oh no,
And then
oh
others, like you were
man.
saying, yes, take years and years
Yes,
and
they take
years.
commitment. They do.
Yes.
They have to have, that breath of where you can really, sit down and now we're really talking, as writers, but you know what I'm saying,
Mm-hmm.
you got to be able to get, past 50K. Is this what you really want to write about, and go in depth with it. And I love writing. I mean, I'm a writer at heart. I may not be, working on a book right now, but I always journal. I did talk
Mm-hmm.
about journaling in my book. So I pretty much, write almost every day in my journal. But I'm waiting, to figure out what that next, thing will be with the Juju series. I'm just not there yet. And that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm good. I'm having um a good time with like kind of just being curious, like what is going to manifest next
I
because I
think
don't
that's
know.
exciting. That's always an exciting time to figure out what you're going to do next and all that. And I'm excited for whatever comes next, whether it's part of the Juju series or if it's something completely entirely different. I'm excited for it because I love your work. So,
Oh, thank you, Pagan.
do you have classes or anything that people can kind of get in touch with you if you teach something that they can learn from? Do you have anything like that for the public out there?
Well, I'm excited. I'm going to be teaching at the Between the World Sacred Spaces conference in Baltimore.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, that's going to be April 6th through the 9th. And that conference as an in-person conference, has been on hold for like 2 or 3 years, I think now because of
Mm-hmm.
COVID. So I'm super excited to travel to Baltimore and be teaching at this conference. I was asked to present there. So that's coming up in April. So I'm working on that and doing that. And so I'm very, very excited to do that. And I'm going to be able to teach some different things, a few things that tie into powerful juju. And then um, another class that I've never really taught before. So I'm excited about that. So for the conference, I'm teaching 3 workshops, I believe. One's gonna be dealing with music, like playlists from the Powerful Juju book,
Mm-hmm.
and then a write for Tituba, that I wrote about in the book, so I'm super excited to do that, and then I'm also teaching a class on doll magic. So
Oh, I want to
yeah.
say, I don't remember if it was, I want to say it was Witch's Sabbath, the first one that I attended, that you talked about doll magic and the doll that you made of Tituba, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I love dolls. So,
So that was a
you
really
know,
fun
I'm
thing.
very excited to teach about my dolls and the
I
ones
love
that
it.
are special for me. And if you go out on the, the conference website, I think it's up there now, the classes I'm teaching, but it's definitely going to be a class where you either like dolls or they're just not your thing, which I understand. So I'm very excited to explore that, and see, who knows, maybe that's where I go next. But yes, I'm excited about all those classes and the doll class and they're excited too.
I'm excited for you to teach those classes, especially in person, because with COVID, it's been very hard.
Yes, it
Um,
has.
and it's been very hard to do the witchy kind of connections. Don't get me wrong, the
Yes.
virtual ones have been fantastic, especially for people like me who have a harder time traveling.
Right,
But
right.
at the same time, those in-person ones, you get I would say you get a lot more out of them because you're able to connect in the physical as well as
Mhm.
in the spiritual. So I think that that's really exciting that you're able to do that again. And so for those who are listening, if you're in the Baltimore area and you would like to attend this, make sure you go and check that out. Najah, I'm sorry. If you would like to, if you want to send me the link to that conference, I will include it in the show notes so people
Oh,
can purchase
yes, I
tickets if they
will.
want to.
Oh, thank you. And I'm pretty much living on Instagram these days. So Instagram's become my happy place. So, in terms of social media, you can always find me out there.
I love it. Well, everybody, go pick up a copy of Good Juju and Powerful Juju. You will love both these books. They are such comfortable and wonderful reads and offer so much beautiful insight into different aspects of practice that you may not have normally thought of. So definitely go check them out. There's also a review on hearthandseed.com, my blog, to Powerful Juju that was posted yesterday. There will be a link in the show description that you can go check that out and check out all the other reviews that I've written. And Najah, thank you so much for being here. This was so
Thank
amazing.
you.
And
Thank you.
you're
It was
welcome to come back
wonderful.
anytime you'd like, just to
Oh,
chat
thank you
about
so much.
whatever.
I would love that. I would love that. Thank you, Pagan. And thank you again to all your listeners. This has been a wonderful experience. So thank you guys so much.
All right, everybody. Well, y'all take care of yourselves, and I'll see y'all next week. Bye, everyone.